Hello and welcome. This is the second episode of Plums and Peaches, and we will kick off by making the promise that this episode will almost certainly be shorter than last week's. Another promise is that hopefully, with the addition of a new webcam and microphone, you'll not only be able to hear me better, but hopefully you should see me better as well. But anyways, moving on, we welcome back the greatest South African Frenchman that has ever played cricket in Hanwell. Mr. Lucas Smith, how are you, mate?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Good, actually. Had a nice net today. Hit a couple out of the middle for once. But yeah. Moving on. Lucas, do you want to go through what we're covering today?
Yeah, so today we're kind of giving an overview of the second and unfortunately final South Africa versus India test. And we'll also be doing the Pakistan-Australia and then quickly diverting into SAT20 Preview. And then moving on to Australia-India Women's Series, which is still ongoing. And then finally Afghanistan versus the UAE and how that series unfolded.
Lovely. So we'll begin with a New Year's test in Cape Town. India looked to level the series after suffering an innings defeat at Centurion. Dean Elgar, in his final match as a test cricketer, won the toss and chose to bat. Even though, statistically, Newlands has the lowest first session batting average of any ground in the world. However, the overall average is actually all right. It's actually higher than the MCG and Lords, which basically shows that after the first session, batting there's quite nice and it tends to flatten out. But obviously, in this case, it didn't flatten out. But still, the question remains, Lucas, why did Elgar choose to bat first?
Look, it was certainly one that confused me from certainly from a perspective of dropping that extra batter that South Africa had in the first test. Look, obviously, in the end, Bavuma didn't bat in the first test, so it was like we only had 6 batsmen. But the fact that we actually went into the second game without that extra batsman and then decided to bat first against a pretty pumped up Indian bowling attack wasn't necessarily potentially the smartest choice that we could have taken. But look, whatever you do, you have to do it well. And South Africa didn't turn up for the first hour, and India were just all over them. I think Siraj and Bumrah. Well, we'll get onto that in a bit, but they were brilliant.
So we'll start with obviously the first hour. So obviously India picked up the ball. Siraj thought he was playing against Sri Lanka because he took 6 of 15, and South Africa bowled out for 55 before the lunch break. And there's rumours apparently Siraj has moved home. He now lives permanently on the 6 to 8 metre length at Newland. Do you know why? Because he bowled 58% of his deliveries on that good length, which compared to the first game is a much improved performance for the big man from Hyderabad, isn't it, Lucas?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, he was superb. Like, he didn't miss, like you said, he didn't miss that area very much at all. And on that pitch, it was just so lethal, really. I mean, the amount of movement that was extracted from both Siraj and Bumrah in that first hour or two, which was all there really was of that South African innings, was really, really special. And as a South African supporter, hard to watch, but it was certainly a fantastic bowling effort and one that you have to kind of tip your hat to.
Yeah, agreed. A bit more on Siraj, but I kind of feel like he has this mode where sometimes he'll be bowling and not much might be happening. He'll be quiet for a while, a spell, an hour, even sometimes a couple of games. But he's a bit like Stuart Broad, and I don't know if you agree with me on this, but when he gets on a roll, he literally runs through entire batting lineups very, very quickly. So the point is, even when he seems to be a bit flat or a little bit out of form, he's one of those guys that you always have in the team sheet anyway, because he can basically win a test match or a game single-handedly in a very short space of time.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, and he also always seems to do well when his back's against the wall. Similar to a Stuart Broad type character, but I mean, after not bowling so well in the first test, he certainly would have been up for it coming into the Newlands test. And we've seen this before, against Sri Lanka and in the World Cup and whatnot. He's just, when he gets on a roll, you just can't stop him. And yeah, he bowled superbly well and deserved his 6 for really.
Yeah. Obviously he bowled really well in that first hour, but still, it was a bit odd because I'll tell you this. Normally in South Africa, for every 11 or 12 false shots, a wicket falls. This is like similar to the global rate, which is also around 11 or 12. In the first test at Centurion, how many false shots do you think it took for a wicket to fall? This at Centurion.
Well, I would say it would be below. I'd go maybe 8 or 9, maybe even 7.
Yeah, it was actually 7.
Yeah.
7 in Centurion, and on the first morning at Newlands, it was 5.
That, do you know what? That's actually surprisingly high for how often the nicks were found and all the rest.
So quite literally, the Indian bowlers just hit a length, bowled good areas. The Saffers nicked absolutely everything, and basically everything was caught in the cordon. Nothing was dropped. Honestly, how weird was that first hour?
Well, it looked like the South Africans had somewhere to go. Like they were off to get they were invited to a braai or something. But I mean, you know, it was really quite a strange hour or two even, and not one that not something you expect to see very often in Test cricket, especially from two top tier nations. But yeah, look, at the end of the day, South Africa won the back foot after 2 hours in the game, and you know, it was certainly a very enthralling period, and you know, very entertaining.
Agreed. So obviously India bowled South Africa out for their lowest total since readmission. Do you know how long it took them to get into the lead when they batted?
I think it was like 10 overs, maybe 11.
Literally 10 overs. And as I've woken up 3 hours into the game, I've had a look and it's like they're already into the lead. And I'm like, oh, that's great. You know, India have started strong. And then I realized, no, they've already bowled and South Africa have been knocked over. So that was weird. But do you know what that does mean? Pakistan are the only team that have never been bowled out inside of one session, which is a win, kind of.
Was South Africa the other team not to do that?
No, I think they might have done it once before, but
Okay.
found that anyways.
Yeah,
Do you know what the best part was about that day? It wasn't even the worst collapse that happened that day, did it?
No, I mean, look, we can talk about how crazy and how action packed the first 2 hours were, but at 153 for 4, with India coasting along, really looking like they're going to win by a similar margin to what South Africa did, if not more, in the first test. Out of nowhere, Ngidi takes the wicket of KL Rahul, and it just all turns around. And I believe the scorecard read whoa, which
It was
is not not something you see every day. 6 wickets in 11 balls, for no runs as well. I mean, I think they spoke about saying they spoke about seeing 5 wickets for no runs, but even that's like a ridiculously rare feat. But six for none is in 11 balls is just ridiculous, really.
It was the first time ever a side has lost 6 wickets without making a single run in Test cricket history. I know you said whoa, but literally the scorecard went wicket dot, run out, wicket. And Ngidi got a triple wicket maiden, and Rabado nicked off Kohli and Prasid Krishna. And wait till I read out this scorecard. So Jaiswal 0, Sharma 39, Gill 36, Kohli 46, Shreyas Iyer 0, KL Rahul 8, Jadeja 0, Bumrah 0, Siraj 0, Krishna 0, Mukesh Kumar 0. Extras 24. Once again, extras putting up the goods. So literally only 4 batters made a run for India.
Yeah, I mean, again, it just tells you the nature of the pitch, and clearly the Newlands groundsman wasn't in a good state of mind when he prepared that pitch. But we'll move on. I mean, we've already touched on that, and I'm sure we'll speak about it more. But look, as much as it kind of it brought South Africa back into the game, but it's not something you want to be seeing regularly. I wouldn't have thought. I mean, we haven't mentioned this yet, but it's. I think this Test match was the shortest ever Test match in terms of balls bowled. I think it was somewhere in the 500s. And
No,
that's just
over 600 actually.
Was it 600? Okay.
So just longer than an ODI.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't want to be seeing that. It's a real shame,
But did you hear that thing Ravi Shastri said on commentary? If you went around the corner for a dump, did you go around the corner for a dump? Not that anyone needs to know that, but where were you when that happened?
Well,
did you see any of it?
I witnessed all of it actually. I literally just come downstairs from finishing off some work, and I came down first ball. I think Ngidi got Rahul, and then it just kept the wickets just kept tumbling, and it was kind of like a unstoppable force in nature. It just nothing that India could have done would have stopped that fall of wickets. Really, it was quite something to watch. Really,
I'll be honest. I had a feeling that obviously they get one, and then they might get another one or another one. But I didn't expect to get another one and another one and another one. That was just nuts. And hear this about most of the dismissals in this test match. There were 33 of them. 29 were caught. There was not a single LBW. And out of the remaining 3, which were all bowled, 2 of them were actually chopped on, so they weren't going to hit the stumps anyway. So my question to you is, why on earth did the batters not leave the ball more? Do you think the inconsistent bounce had something to do with it?
To be perfectly honest, I don't think there was a huge deal of inconsistent bounce. Obviously, we saw a bit of it when Shreyas Iyer was dismissed in the second innings. Or was it I think it was Shreyas.
No, that was
Gill? Oh no, it was Shubman. It was Shubman. But look, at the end of the day, yes, you can make the argument for batsmen leaving more, but in fairness, a lot of those 29 wickets that fell, predominantly caught in the slip cordon, were pretty good balls that just kind of did a lot off the pitch sideways and maybe with a bit of extra bounce. I mean, how many DRSs did we see get overturned for LBW? I mean, I think it was 5 or 6. They're just going over. From anywhere else in the world, you probably see I was hitting on the knee roll, trapped on the crease, like crashing into the stumps 3/4 up, and every time it was comfortably over the stumps, which is
you basically had to bowl a half volley to hit the stumps.
Yeah.
If you bowled anywhere near good length on that pitch, you're in serious possibility of getting a wicket. But a bloke who probably wants to forget this test match, Tristan Stubbs, the first batter in over 120 years to get out twice on his first day in test cricket. The South African coach, Shukri Conrad, obviously apologised, not that he made the pitch. But aside from today, do you think Stubbs has a future in red ball cricket, or do you think it was just like a quick fill in the middle order because they didn't have anyone, even though they did have Keegan Peterson?
Look, I think Tristan Stubbs, and there's quite a few promising South African youngsters in the ranks at the moment, and he's certainly one of them. You look at his first class average. I know he's only played about 20 odd games, or even if that, and he's averaging mid-40s. Look, everyone, especially on that pitch, second time around he got an absolute beauty from Bumrah, and first time around potentially a little bit unlucky with a bit of extra bounce, caught a short leg, but you can't really fault him too much. I thought, obviously this isn't going to get mentioned much, but he was outstanding in the field. I think he stopped. No, he was brilliant. Saved maybe 4 or 5 boundaries. And in that period when India was starting to get on top with bat in hand, he really was one of the few putting their bodies on the line.
What was he fielding?
He was I think he was at point for quite a lot of it.
All right. So you're talking about like little dabs to third man that he stopped going for 4, or just played for the cover?
Yeah. But I think something that we could also say is the outfield was so much slower at Newlands than it was at Centurion. I mean, the amount of balls that came out the middle of the bat that you thought were guaranteed nailed on boundaries just ended up plugging and just almost not getting to the boundary really.
Yeah, that was weird. But obviously Stubbs made basically no runs, and neither did anyone else apart from one man, Aidan Markram. who statistically scored the most improbable Test 100 like since records began, which basically, according to CricViz, there's been 1,096 Test 100s where ball tracking was available, and not a single one was tougher than Markram's because they've got this thing called expected runs and expected wickets, which is a bit like XG in football, where every ball they've just like, you know. So do you know what the expected average was for Markram's innings? Do you want to take a guess?
Go on. Go on. I'll go 11.
Oh, nearly. It was 16.6.
Okay.
So basically,
Little...
I think there's a bit of an echo through your IS6 now. Anyway, basically, a normal batter would have been out 6 times, and Markram managed to get 100. But obviously, Markram isn't no ordinary batter, is he, Lucas?
We spoke about unknown quantities in the last episode with Pakistan. I mean, he's just another one of them, really. He's impossible to. It's impossible to tell whether he's going to score runs or not. He's just one of those batsmen that on his day he'll score a bucket load of runs, and if he can find any sort of consistency with that, he will no doubt go down as one of South Africa's best batsmen. I think the talent he possesses and the stroke making ability that he has is second to none, in my opinion, in the world. I think he certainly displayed that in the 100 in this game, which I know it's very early on, and I mentioned this to you, but I've tipped this at, like you mentioned, the hardest ball, the hardest 100, sorry, that has been recorded according to those statistics. I mean, it's certainly already an early contender for century or for performance of the year.
It's going to take quite a beating. And Markram's one of those. He's been around for quite a while, and he's been very inconsistent. But it's always clearly obvious how talented he was, because he'd always turn up with one innings. Remember that 156? Was it at Joburg against Australia in 2018?
I think it was
series.
I can't remember. He got 2 big 100s. One was at Durban, and I think the other one was at Joburg. I'm not certain which one was which, but
it was always obvious how talented he was. But he's just started to reach his peak years. I think he's like 28, nearly 29 now, possibly. And you just really hope he finds his form, because he's a serious 3-format player. And if he can get some sort of like half consistency, he'll be like a serious player in the next 3 years across T20s, ODIs, and obviously Test matches as well. But obviously, despite Markram's 100, South Africa only managed 176. The rest of the team got 70 odd combined, and that's because a certain man called Jasprit Bumrah got another 6 for. So
go on.
Yeah, obviously India were chasing 80, but hear this. Bumrah's only 1 behind Kapil Dev now. Yeah, that's it for most overseas fifers for India. So do you think he's like India's greatest fast bowler ever yet? Maybe
he's certainly up there. I mean, I know he's only played 33 tests, but I mean, he just performs game in, game out. Like, he's one of those players, that he's going to take wickets every time he bowls, and he's just. I mean, they did a piece on it during the Test match about how awkward and unorthodox his action is. I think he releases it 40 centimeters in front of any other bowler. So just as you think,
bowler,
he's so tricky to face, and you can tell. I mean, he just possesses that ability to just take wickets at will. And that, I mean, I personally think one of the biggest moments in that spell was the wicket of Stubbs just before the close of play. You think South Africa get into the close of play at 2 down with 2 of the best stroke makers that are currently around in South African cricket.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, they would certainly still have been in the game with the likes of Bedingham, Verreynne, Janssen, all stroke makers as well. So there was certainly a possibility of South Africa getting back back into the game, but it wasn't to be.
I feel like earlier we were talking about Siraj being similar to Broad, and some people were saying that obviously Broad and Anderson, Siraj and Bumrah, but I feel Bumrah's just different. Every time he bowls, he's not like Siraj where he'll have off days and then he'll have days where he runs through lineups. Bumrah will either run through a lineup or bowl in such good areas that you cannot hit him off the square, and the bloke at the other end ends up getting all the wickets. So he almost rarely ever goes wrong. If you ain't getting wickets, you're not scoring off him. And he's almost so hard to play. But obviously, India went out to bat chasing, 80 was it?
Yeah, 76.
To put the pitch into context, they basically came out and said, I think if we try to play properly, we might actually get out. So it just came out and swung off their asses, chased it down in under 10 overs, and it basically became a slogathon. And Shukri Conrad, who we'll be hearing a lot of soon, he's been very busy. He called it a slogathon, and he said it was just pure luck. He also said the pitch wasn't great, which is pretty obvious. And he said this, quote, all the ethics and values of Test cricket go out the window. So my question to you, Lucas, do you actually think possibly South Africa might have gone slightly over the line when it comes to making favourable home pitches?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, it's very rich of Shukri Conrad to be blaming the pitch and blaming India for playing the way that they did to chase those runs down, because, like you said, 75 on that pitch is no cakewalk. Like,
Nah, I don't mean.
They could have. It was the only way to go, and I mean the conditions kind of forced India down that road. And at the end of the day, you have to do what you need to do to win. And like going back to what you were saying, look, it's clear that South African pitches are suited to South Africa's strengths, but I think that's the same anywhere else in the world. I think potentially they've gone a little bit overboard with the Newlands test. I think the pitch in Pretoria was fine. I mean, there was a contest between bat and ball. If you applied yourself with the bat, you could score runs, and if you put the ball in the air consistently enough, you would take wickets. So potentially for this test match, yes, but I don't think it should be a concern going forward. No.
Yeah, I think it's a bit similar to how obviously India will make spin wickets when they're at home, and England will make greenish wickets when they're at home. But I feel like when a side goes too far towards their strengths, so making one that rags too much or one that bounces too much or does too much, you almost take the favorability out of it. It becomes basically a toss of the coin. So what would have been advantage basically gives the away side an actual chance of winning a game now, which isn't one that you want to do. However, despite India leaving South Africa for it's only the second time ever they've shared a test series there, a man by the name of Rohit Sharma still had some interesting stuff to say about the pitch. First he took about the World Cup final pitch. He was complaining and said that he couldn't believe that it got a below average rating because Travis Head scored 100 on it, which means it can't have possibly been a bad pitch, which by Markrams today maybe isn't true. He also said, quote, I don't mind playing on pitches like this as long as everyone keeps their mouths shut in India and doesn't complain about Indian pitches. So, Lucas, tell me, is there a difference between a pitch that turns too much and is too in favour of spinners compared to one that's too in favour of fast bowlers, or maybe a really flat one that's too in favour of batters like you find in Pakistan often?
Look, it's not. Test cricket is supposed to be a spectacle, and it's not particularly enjoyable when one discipline, whether it's bowling or batting, is on top. It's nice to see a good contest. Obviously, like I mentioned before, wherever you go in the world, those conditions will be prepared in the advantage of the home team. But that's just how it is, and that's how you have to play. Obviously, when, like you said, when someone goes so far over that it then becomes a lottery and a toss of the coin, which is, I think, potentially what Shukri Conrad is alluding to. But again, it's a South African pitch, so there should be no complaints on South Africa's part or from that side of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just, when wickets are so one-sided, I feel like it can take some of the enjoyment out of it.
I agree. You said about the balance between bat and ball. I do agree with that. What I'm trying to get to is at points in a test match, you want to see it's the ebb and flow of a test match that make it interesting. Where at times the batters will be on top, there'll be a partnership, and then some wickets will fall, or there'll be cloud cover and bowlers will be on top. But when it's so heavily in favour of one, where like in this test match, where it was just wickets falling all the time and the batters were never on top at any point of the game almost. Or like if you've got a test match in Pakistan where basically wickets don't exist and it's just runs, and more runs, that's when it really just becomes a bit not much of a spectacle because the ebb and flow of bat and ball isn't there, is it?
No, it's completely desensitizing. You end up having to find other things to do, which, you want. Test cricket, like you said, is all about the ebb and flow, and it is nice to really see that kind of black and white element in terms of at one point one team's on top and then all of a sudden a couple of quick wickets, a little bit of luck or whatever just changes the game. And when that goes out of the window, it's not as entertaining and certainly not as fun to watch.
Agreed. Moving on, it might seem like the end for South African Test cricket, but it isn't quite there yet. But there was a last Test match for someone, Dean Elgar, whose final game had so much controversy that we basically almost forgot about him. His Test match was over in the first day, like it was for Tristan Stubbs. But this seems a bit like the rest of his career, where he just kind of goes in the shadows and we forget about him amongst all the other stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at his record and it's not particularly sparkling. I mean, obviously he's done fantastically well at home, but overall, I think he averages maybe 38 and a half, which is certainly not up there with the greats of the game. But he's just gone about his business quietly over the last 10 years, and he has been a very valuable servant of South African Test cricket, just churning out runs when they most need them. And actually, just whilst we're talking about his retirement, I thought that Kohli's gesture when Dean Elgar was dismissed was fantastic to see. I think
Kohli, yeah,
exactly. I think Virat Kohli's been scrutinized in the past for being a bit too intense or whatnot on the field, but I mean, it shows potentially that he's matured and just the class of an individual appreciating what was a very, very a good Test career, really.
Yeah, I agree with what you said on Kohli, but obviously he still has that aggressive side in the field. He hasn't lost any of that, but I think it just what I have seen different from him now is he at times when gestures like that need to be shown or times like that need to happen, he's shown it more often than before. He's still as aggressive as he used to be when a wicket falls or when he makes runs, etc. But now he's just showing a bit of both sides. And well, with Elgar leaving, although would you say his average was like 38 or something?
Yeah, 38 and a half, I think.
Yeah, somewhere around 40. It might not seem like loads, but with his current South African batting lineup, that's more than enough, which now means who goes at the top of the order?
Well, I mean, to be perfectly honest, there aren't a lot of options. Potentially, you can move Tony DeZorzi up to open. I know that he's opened in the past. And then you're probably looking at one exciting youngster who's not quite broken into the Test team just yet is Jordan Herdman, who played for the Sunrisers Eastern Cape last season in the SA20, which we'll get onto in a short time. His average is, I think, low 60s in first class cricket. Again, he's not played a huge amount of games, but certainly a talent for the future and one to watch out for.
So is that your shout for long-term successor?
I think so. Yeah, there's not a huge amount of options. There's another one who plays for the Lions, which is the team that's based in Johannesburg at the
Okay.
Wanderers, and his name is Josh Richards. I think he averages mid 40s, quite young. I think he's 24, so potentially another option.
Mhm.
But I mean, Jordan Herman could be preferred purely because he's left-handed. So it'd be kind of like for like with
Mhm.
Dean Elgar.
Agreed. And I know it seems like sometimes in South Africa that they might be a bit short or something, but as happens quite often with fast bowlers, like Berger will just turn up or a new one will just turn up on the blocks. But I don't think we should be too worried. There's always more than enough talent in South African cricket. Just need to get them through. But I don't think any of these talents there'll be anything like Elgar in terms of the dogged high elbow nudging kind of opening batter like Karuna Ratne or Imam Haq, or the only one really left is Tajanarayan Chanderpaul. So do you think Elgar's like the last of the kind when it comes to those type of batters?
Well, if he's not the last, he's certainly, like you said, I really can't think of many more who do have that kind of grit to their game. But yeah, it is quite sad. I mean, just in general, this kind of next couple of years is going to be quite a big transition period in cricket with all the big names kind of coming to an end in terms of their career. But yeah, look, I think at the end of the day, cricket's evolving and it's potentially no longer that kind of nudge and nurdle game, and people are starting to score at higher rates. And I think there's well, you certainly won't be rewarded as much for having that kind of grit and determination, which is something actually that we've seen from the likes of Ben Compton potentially in England,
Mhm.
who scored, obviously didn't have a fantastic season last year, but scored bucket loads in 2022, and couldn't quite break in with the kind of new Bazball era.
Yeah, that's probably why. But a reason for all this lack of doggedy batting is probably the advent of all these T20 leagues going around, and as we've just hit at this time of year, there's going to be a procession of T20 leagues coming, the PSL, and then eventually the IPL. There's a big bash currently going on. Bangladesh are going to do theirs. ILT20. God knows, I'm losing count. But there's one that starts this week, the SAT20, which has caused quite a stir. As we spoke about last week, there are some supposed scheduling issues, according to once again Shukri Conrad, which means that obviously South Africa announced their Z team for the New Zealand tour, quite literally. And he literally called. Do you know what he called it? The SAT20.
No, go. Well, I do, but yeah, go for it.
He called it the lifeblood of South African cricket. Did you see that? And he
Yeah,
basically
I
said
did. Yeah.
that if you don't, he basically said their hand had been forced because of like they. So what was it with the scheduling? Like, what actually happened?
So, from my understanding, look, the SA20 is going to be very valuable to South Africa in terms of income, which has been severely lacking in South African cricket,
Hmm.
over quite a long period of time now. But look, I think so. From what Cricket South Africa have said is they've tried to move around or push, I believe, push the New Zealand series back
All
so
right.
that it doesn't, the back end of the SA20 doesn't clash with it. Unfortunately, that hasn't been possible, and they've kind of shipped off an SAA team, which I'm sure I'll get onto that later. You know.
Yeah. That's fair point. An A team is probably an overstatement. But Shukri Conrad, he also said that obviously if South Africa don't have the SCT20, that Test cricket won't happen anyways. Is he talking bollocks, or is there like genuine like fact to that?
Look, whenever financials come into any aspect of life, it's not necessarily the most see-through thing. Obviously, we have no idea what kind of financial state Cricket South Africa is in, but you certainly don't want to be sacrificing Test cricket to fund a T20 league, in my opinion. There's certainly been the area floating around for the idea floating around for the last couple of years about how Test cricket is dying, and as sad as it might be, this could go a long way to
Making
sustain
it
that, making it a reality and sustaining that kind of idea.
agreed. And obviously Conrad wasn't the only one who spoke about the scheduling issues. The Cricket South Africa actually came out after like the big thing with the New Zealand tour. Do you want to read their statement and what they said?
Look, just to give a bit of context, this is about this is the response from Cricket South Africa to the reaction from outraged fans.
Outraged fans,
after,
outraged like you,
including myself. After that, the shambolic team selection. Let's not beat around the bush. So here it is. The Board of Cricket South Africa notes the concerns about the composition of the Test squad that will be travelling to New Zealand later this month. We reassure the fans that Cricket South Africa has the utmost respect for the Test format as the pinnacle of the game we love. The dates for this tour were set when the Future Tours programme for 2023 to 2027 was finalised in 2022. The window for the SA20 had not been determined at that stage. Once it became apparent that there would be a clash, we made every effort to find another mutually suitable time slot for this two-test series in consultation with New Zealand Cricket. Regrettably, the constraints imposed by the global cricket calendar rendered this impossible, as the games must be played before April 2025 as part of the World Test Championship. We commend head coach Shukri Conrad and his staff for preparing the selected players for this tour, and we are confident that they will represent the Proteas badge with honour. We wish them all the very best.
Was that it?
Yeah.
So, despite what they said, it's clearly obvious that the SAT20 is Cricket South Africa's priority. So now that they've made it a priority, what purpose does it actually serve? Obviously finances and stuff, but is there anything else that it can help Cricket South Africa with?
I wouldn't necessarily call this a problem, but it could potentially help to grow the sport in South Africa.
Yeah,
which might sound a little weird, considering it's probably the second biggest sport in South Africa, if not the biggest, actually. But I mean, certainly from my point of view, I can't really see why it would be. The SA20 League would be more beneficial for South African cricket than trying to really impose themselves on the Red Bull game and try and be involved more and play more games each year.
Agreed. And obviously, you being a South African, this is now the second year of the SAT20. I just want to ask you, who do you support in the SAT20?
To be perfectly honest, I don't actually have a team that I support in general. I like to follow the players around a little bit.
Fair enough.
One that I was particularly invested in last year was Devold Brevis, who was also my 2024 breakthrough player shout, which
keep reminding us of that.
might not come to a surprise to many of you, but look, at the end of the day, there's a lot of very talented players in this league that certainly deserve more exposure than they have got. So potentially, going back to your previous question, that could be another advantage to it, getting more of the grassroots cricket involved in South Africa and really helping to push through the talented youngsters that we've certainly seen in last year's edition.
Yeah, that probably means, or probably helps the notion that it's not just another T20 league like the IL T20 or the Abu Dhabi T10, and it obviously serves a bit more of a purpose than just the finances, clearly. But apart from that, do you have a favourite for the tournament or any side that looks decent, and like who are you tipping for the title?
It's very difficult to tell, to be honest. I mean, everyone last year thought that Mumbai Indians Cape Town would run away with it. I mean, their lineup is full of stars. I mean, you look at Rabada, Sam Curran, Devold Brevis, Jofra Archer, obviously last year I mean,
Rashid was there, wasn't he?
Rashid Khan, yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
The list is endless, really. I mean, I'd probably have to tip them. I mean, obviously, I know they really disappointed last year, but I just think that their quality is going to come through this year. You've certainly got other sides, though. Another team that I wouldn't be surprised if they went all the way would be Sunrisers Eastern Cape. You know, under Aidan Markram.
They won last year.
Yeah, they did. You know, so I wouldn't be particularly surprised to see them go back to back. But yeah, I reckon those are the two favourites for me. Obviously, last year's winner, and then the team with probably the most talent at the moment. And actually, just to add to that, I believe I can't exactly remember his name, and I'm just going to look it up very quickly. But MI Cape Town have also found a replacement for Jofra Archer this season. I think it was only announced about an hour ago.
All right, I haven't seen it.
Nyawan Tusara, the Sri Lankan quick bowler who bowls quite similarly to the likes of Lasith Malinga and Matisha Patirana, has been signed by Mumbai Indians Cape Town, and hear this, he's actually 29.
He's 29.
He's only just burst onto the scene, but he's 29, which is quite astounding, really.
So he's basically Patirana but older.
Exactly. I mean, from what I've seen of him, he looks quite competent, and certainly looks like he could play a role in Mumbai Indians Cape Town going all the way this year.
Fair enough. And Benivar, obviously massive English following. There's always quite a few Englishmen in Pretoria capital, so that's going to be my side. Can't wait to see Butler, Salt, and Phil Salt, Will Jacks, Butler, and whoever else plays. Or Butler's at the Royals.
Butler's at Paul Royals.
Royals, that's it.
Paul Royals, yeah.
Yeah, but I'll get used to it eventually. But anyway, we're going to hop across the Indian Ocean now to land down under. Pakistan looked to end their 16-game losing streak in a way Aussie test, but to kick off in classic Pakistani selection drama, Imam ul-Haq was dropped for a promising young left-hander, Saim Ayub, which basically means now that Fakhar and Abdullah Shafiq are both opening an ODI. Imam ul-Haq is not in the starting 11 for any format. And we'll kick off with the game. For the first time in Test history, a calendar year began with both openers getting out for a duck when Shafiq and Saim Ayub nicked off in the first 8 balls. Barber then did his classic, hit 2 nice cover drives and then kicked a straight one from Pat Cummins. Masood nicked off twice to Mitchell Marsh. The first was a no ball, then he got out again. Literally exact same. Pakistan were 5 down very, very quickly, but then Rizwan and Amir Jamal both got 80s. Agha Salman got 50. Pakistan finally got 300 in the series, somehow. But then Pat Cummins, he decided to start 2024 the same way he ended 2023, his 3rd fifer in a row. Warner came out to a massive reception, his first of many in the test match. And Pakistan was so generous that they did what they did to him in his entire career. They opened up with an off-spinner, bowled a short white long hop that went straight for 4. And basically, Pakistan just said, we loved you for 10 years, David Warner. We'll give you more drop catches and we'll give you a wide long hop. You know, we dropped it.
Yeah, Saim Ayub.
There you go. Great debut. Just like our man, Tristan Stubbs.
To be fair, I mean, he looked quite promising in the second innings as well. But in the first innings, he got an absolute jaffa. I think just for your sake, we're not going to mention the Abdullah Shafiq shot.
No. In the second innings,
I mean, it certainly seems like there is a curse on that first slip position.
Do you know what actually happened
from a catching
dismissal or drop catch?
To be perfectly honest, I don't think I've seen it, but I've heard a huge amount from it.
It was so the fielder who's normally in there, Abdullah Shafiq, got kicked out because he couldn't catch flies, and then Agha Salman got moved to first slip or second slip. I can't remember. He moved to first slip. Barber moved to second. No. Agha Salman's at second. Barber's at first. But Salman went for a toilet break, so Barber moves to second slip, and they put the debutant in, And it literally, this was, I know there were some bad ones this series. There were some easy ones, but oh my God, this was the worst of the lot. He literally did not move. It literally went and it came straight out. It was awful. And I know a thing or two about drop catches, trust me. But we'll move on. Then Marnus and Mitch Marsh, they ended up both getting 50s. Australia got 299. And hear this. Oh, go on.
Yeah, no, just quickly whilst we're on that topic of controversial wickets, you could say, or not wickets in this case. There was quite an interesting image that ESPN Cricinfo put out. I think it was in the first innings when Mitch Marsh dismissed. I think it was Shan Masood for the second time. Yeah, I think it was in the 24th over. Mitch Marsh overstepped after getting Shan Masood out, so it obviously wasn't out. And then five overs later, when Mitch Marsh did knock over Shan Masood, images emerged of the kind of side-on view from the bowler's end to see if it's a no ball or not.
Okay.
And next to Mitch Marsh in his bowling action is Shan Masood standing at the non-striker's end, somehow having been dismissed on that exact delivery. So yeah, a little bit dodgy.
So either Shan Masood was at both ends, or they just showed the wrong replay. Do you think the umpire saw the right replay, but the producer showed the wrong one, possibly?
Well, I mean, we will never know this, but I mean, it won't. At the end of the day, it's not going to make a difference. And
he'd probably nicked off a third time to Stephen Smith, anyways, about 3 balls later, wouldn't he? But yeah, as I was saying, Marnus and Marsh got 50s. Pakistan actually got a lead, which means they had more runs than Australia at some point during the Test match, which for me personally counts as a victory. So we'll take that as a win. We've won half a Test match in Australia. But then the man of the series, or contention for man of the series, Amar Jamal, got 6 of 69 to follow up with his 88 in the first innings. But despite that, Pakistan came out to bat, and they decided 58 for 2 wasn't enough. So for the second time in the year, almost 2 in 2 days, there was a triple wicket maiden. Hazelwood went whoa, as Pakistan went to 67 for 7. They were cleaned up for 115, and the Aussies were chasing 130. Abdullah Shafiq got an absolute seed from Mitchell Stark, like proper left armour, hooping in. I know his first innings shot was bad, but there's not much he could have done about this one. Travis Head got Barber out, so Barber just decided that not scoring runs in 2023 with a red ball was exactly what he's going to do in 2024, or at least so far. The Aussies, they were chasing 130. They waltzed the chase. Marnus got 50. So did Warner in his final innings. Got a massive, reception walking off. Pakistan did exactly what we expected. They lost 3-0. There's now 17 lost Test matches in a row in Australia. And incidentally, their tour ended just how it started, or in a way that we expect. I think the final over had or one of the final overs had a drop catch, an overthrow, an overturned review, and an umpire's call. But one thing we can't put against Pakistan is at least they consistently fielded poorly in the series, huh?
Look, consistency counts for something, right? Like, I mean, look, Pakistan, I'm starting to feel a little bit sorry for them. I mean, the amount of times they get into good positions, none more so than this Test match. I mean, how many teams in the last 10 years have gone to Australia and have had a first innings lead?
Not many.
Like, just think of the amount of times that's actually happened. And then once again, presented with a fantastic opportunity to break that long streak of losses away from home in Australia, they just completely collapse again. And, it is a real shame. You would love to see a little bit more parity when teams go to Australia, but they're just so dominant.
And, it's normally because of the pitches, but this one was like, it didn't even bounce as much. It was one of the slower wickets, and there was turn. So if Pakistan had any chance, it'd be here. But of course, they don't like, winning matches they should win. But at least there's one good thing for them. Ahmed Jamal was by far their best player. His debut series, his attitude was top notch, and that means, oh, excuse me, it basically means that now he's only the third overseas player ever after Wasim Akram and Ian Botham to get over 140 runs and 16 wickets in an Aussies Test tour. So, have you heard much about Ahmed Jamal or his backstory?
I heard that. Well, I was following the game a little bit on ESPN Cricket Info, and I saw. I think the last time Pakistan were touring Australia, he was playing in a local Australian team,
Yeah, he was at the ground.
local cricket club, and he was he was at the ground watching the game. It's a fantastic story for any kind of young cricketers.
He was, he was actually not that tour. The tour before, the last time they played at Sydney, he was at the ground. I think he played under-19 cricket for Pakistan, and then he went to Australia to look for some work, and obviously played a bit of grade cricket there. And then he eventually came back, made his way through, and it's good to see people like that making it through and doing well. But he wasn't the only seam bowling all-rounder during the series who could have been player of the series. The Aussies had the Bison, Mitchell Marsh, 4 half-centuries in the series. And since returning in the Ashes, his form's been top notch, hasn't it?
He's been fantastic. He's been an absolute, well, I wouldn't say revelation, but look, every time he's out there, every time Australia look like they're slightly uncomfortable, he just steps up. I mean, we saw it in the Ashes when he scored that 100 in his first innings back after, I don't know, can't remember how long it was he was out of the Test team. And he's actually surprising. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it is surprising. Added some sort of consistency to his game. I think he scored, was it 3 half-centuries in the last 4 innings?
Oh, that's pretty good.
Actually, it might have been. Let me just double check that. If you want to take over.
Yeah, obviously he's been doing really well, but I was thinking batters like him and Travis Head, because they score so quickly from a position of, especially at the MCG or even here when they're a little bit down, because he scores so fast and hits boundaries so quickly, it basically turns the test match or turns the tide against the opposition very, very quickly. And players like him and Travis Head are almost indispensable for that very reason.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in the first test, he went 90 in the first innings, and then 63 not out in the second. Second test, I think it was 41 and then 96.
Okay.
And then in the third, obviously, I think he got a few as well. But yeah, no. Yeah.
But obviously, as we know, Pakistan, they're probably not going to win or they haven't won, and I don't think they're going to win a test match in Australia anytime soon. But the good news for them is they don't have to see David Warner in the whites of Test cricket anymore, because he's retired. The most polarizing player in the last decade has decided Test cricket's enough. And he also said that he's obviously done with ODI cricket. So here's some of these. He's got 8,500 Test runs in 111 games. His average is 45. He's got 26 Test hundreds. So when it comes to like openers in Test cricket for Australia, Hayden and Langer, where does David Warner sit amongst them in Test cricket at least?
Look, in terms of volume of runs, I mean, he's very, very close. Look, once again, he's one of those players that is just up there all the time. I mean, there is a potential argument for saying he is a little bit of a home track bully.
Oh yeah, of course.
Look, at the end of the day, let's not beat around the bush. Australia is one of the best places to bat in the world. Especially as an Australian batsman. I mean, I think all of their top, I think top 5, maybe top 6, average 50 in Australia, or 50 plus.
At least.
Which is
nuts.
It's crazy. I mean, yeah, look, at the end of the day, David Warner's had a fantastic career. He's not been shy to some controversy.
Oh, yeah. How do you think that controversy has affected his legacy? There's particularly talk about, obviously, Sandpaper Gate in South Africa. How do you think that's affected people's view on him? And do you think he's changed since then, or the does it still have a stain on his record?
Oh, without a doubt, it has a stain on his record. I think, look, any act of attempting to cheat is not right. And look, at the end of the day, he deserved every punishment he got. And, he could, in my eyes, he got off quite lightly. He got a year ban, and I think he's never allowed to captain Australia. But, he could have been much worse. He could have never played for Australia again.
So, yeah. Do you think he wasn't the only one that, you're not the only one who thinks that. Mitchell Johnson obviously doesn't really like him. And there was also a bit of a weird thing. Before the test match, his backpack was apparently stolen or lost. We're not sure yet. But obviously it was found eventually. And in the backpack was his baggy green. So that was a weird thing, but surely it wasn't Mitchell Johnson, was it? Do you actually see what happened?
Look, yeah, well, I've heard the story and I saw the videos of Warner asking for it back, but I wouldn't rule it out. I think Mitchell Johnson's quite potentially not the way you'd expect Mitchell Johnson to get back at someone.
Yeah. Anyways, moving swiftly from that. Obviously, he's been very good in Test cricket, but he's also very, very good at smacking a white ball, as we both know very well. Do you think there was shouts from Andrew McDonald and who is the Aussie head coach, and Pat Cummins? They both called him the best ever 3-format player. Do you think, as in for Australia at least, the best ever 3-format player? I think they're right.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with that. He's got 49 international hundreds across all 3 formats. He's quite a long way off. He's quite a long way off in terms of best ever all 3-format player, like full stop. But he's definitely, for me, he has to be Australia's best ever 3-format player. Look, a shade under 6,000 runs in ODI cricket. 7,000 runs in ODI cricket. 2,900 runs in T20 and internationals. He's got 100. He's got at least 100 in each format, averaging comfortably above 40 in Test cricket and ODIs. And at the rate of scoring that he gets his runs, for me, it's not really a conversation.
Agreed. And obviously, since he announced that he was going to retire, which also was controversial, as everything is with David Warner, there's been like a massive talk and race to see who's going to replace him at the top of the order. And there's quite a few options. There's obviously Cameron Bancroft, whose name is also now infamous with Sandpapergate. There's Marcus Harris, Matthew Renshaw. But there's also been like some surprise shouts from within the team. A promotion for Cam Green possibly, and maybe even Stephen Smith has said he wouldn't mind opening the batting. But who do you think will take up the mantle once Warner's gone, or now that Warner's gone?
Well, statistically, for me, it's got to be Cameron Bancroft. I know he didn't have the best time of it first time around in Test cricket, obviously with Sandpapergate, and from a statistical standpoint as well, he wasn't particularly good. But I certainly think he's done his, or he served his time, if you can put it that way. And he deserves another chance. And when all that kind of went down, like Sandpapergate, I did feel for him a little bit. I felt that Steve Smith and Warner were more to blame, like getting the kind of new kid in the team to do your deed is kind of as low as it gets, really. I felt very bad for him, and obviously he made a mistake, but those happen, and it could have very well been the case that he was pressured into it.
Possibly, yeah. Let's hope that whoever comes in can do half as well as David Warner, which will be more than enough for Australia. But we're not done on Aussie cricket yet, because the Aussie women's team are currently touring in India. They lost the Test match, but they just finished an ODI series, and as we speak, they're halfway through at T21. But speaking on the ODI series, they in the final game they completed the whitewash. They scored their highest ever score versus Indian ODIs. They've got 338 for 7. Phoebe Litchfield already had 250s in the first 2 games. She ended up getting 100 in the final one, and she was outstanding in the field. Took a great catch, and the Aussies just cleaned up India, won comfortably. which now means that India have lost 9 straight ODI series to Australia. But a bit more on Phoebe Litchfield. She's just 20 years old, has the same amount of ODI hundreds as Elise Perry, and is only the second Australian after Meg Lanning to make 2 tons before she turns 21. Her ODI batting average is just over 60, and the best part is she's born in a place called Orange. But in all seriousness, it won't be long before she's like the premier batter in women's game, right?
Well, she's got a fantastic career ahead of her. I mean, you just look at the numbers. She's not played a huge amount of games, but potentially a little bit underwhelming in Test cricket. But again, only 4 innings.
Yeah,
so not a big sample size. And 20 years of age. 20 years of age. I mean, I think it's kind of a given. I think she's going to be an integral part in growing or in continuing to grow the women's game.
Fair enough. And like all great batsmen, she abuses the reverse sweep, as I know very well. But there was something weird about this series. Do you see the whole series was, I think, almost the whole series was staged in Mumbai, which kind of makes makes home advantage a bit iffy, because the whole point of home advantage is that you can adjust to the different pitches around the country that the opposition won't have time to adjust to because you have prior knowledge. But if you keep playing on the same ground, surely just Australia would have got used to it. It's a bit weird, isn't it?
I think it makes it more level in terms of one team not having a pre-planned advantage. So from that point of view, I think it's good, but it is quite odd. You never really see that, even in women's cricket. I mean, you look at whenever England play at home, they play at the likes of Taunton, Bristol. It's quite a widespread, widespread of conditions as well. So yeah.
And the fact that India is a massive country, I'm pretty sure they would have liked to spread out a few of the games. But swiftly, Alyssa Healy, she got her first ODI 50 as Aussie captain, and the Australians have been like very, very dominant. One of the most dominant cricket sides ever, this Australian women's side. But do you think Alyssa Healy as captain can continue the Aussie dominance now that Meg Lanning has retired? Or will there be a new big front runner in the women's game?
Well, I wouldn't call her old by any stretch, but she is getting on a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, 33 years of age, nearly 34 in March. I think even if she is around for 3 or 4 more years, I think the mantle will be passed over at some point in terms of the captaincy to potentially the likes of a Phoebe Litchfield, and depending on whether she's got the leadership capabilities. But look, Alyssa Healy's been fantastic player over the years. Yeah. But look, at the end of the day, it's hard to tell. But I can't see her being or having a massive impact on women's cricket, or a much bigger impact than she's had in women's cricket in the next couple of years.
Fairs. And lastly, on the Aussie Women's Tour of India, Elise Perry, she hit a 6 in a 300th international appearance. What I meant is she hit a 6 to win the game, which meant now the T20 series is tied at 1-1. Here's some of these numbers, because she's played 12 tests, 141 ODIs, 147 T20 internationals. She's got over 6,500 runs at an average of 45, 400s, 47 half centuries. Her top score is 213. And do you know what the best part about all of that is? That's only half of her cricket, because she's an all-rounder. That was just her batting. Her bowling's got 323 wickets at an average of 23. Is there really any debate ever that she's the greatest women's cricket of this generation, at least?
I think she's the best women's cricketer of all time. I mean, I don't think there's a huge amount of competition. You just look at the pure on a numbers basis, and it's not even close to anyone really.
It's just in some
potentially, yeah. I mean, the only criticism would potentially be the lack of hundreds for such a quality player, and I think looking at some stats here, I think she's got 47 international 50s and only 400s.
Yeah.
So obviously she bats at 4 for most of her career anyway. But you would like to see such a quality player like converting those 50s.
But I guess when you're averaging 45, you've got a million runs and a truckload of wickets there. You can't go too wrong. But to finish off with our last series of the day, but the series we're gonna stay in Asia, or kind of. Does the UAE count as Asia? Yeah, I guess so. Middle East.
Yeah.
Afghanistan beat the UAE 2-1 in Sharjah. But there have been other things off the field that have been both interesting and important. Firstly, Jonathan Trott, he got a 1-year extension as on his deal as head coach. But it's been really interesting because I feel like he's added some very much needed stability to an Afghanistan side, which was previously known for a lot of inconsistencies. But lately, since Trott has come in, they've looked like a much more stable side, which is terrifying for all the other sides because the amount of talent they've got, if they can put some sort of consistency together, they could be very, very, very interesting force to be reckoned with. And do you think how much of that do you think is down to Jonathan Trott?
Well, I don't think Jonathan Trott's had a huge deal of coaching experience, so
Yeah,
I can't say I would have seen it coming. But I mean, look, like you said, the amount of talent there is in Afghanistan cricket at the moment, it would be quite a disappointment to not get the full extent of that and be able to like bring those players through and really showcase them on a world's or like a scale as big as the World Cup or whatnot, or these big upsets that we've seen from Pakistan, Afghanistan, sorry, not Pakistan. But that
yeah,
I mean,
they did
that
upset.
is the consensus at the minute though. Pakistan,
Yeah.
a win for Pakistan now is considered an upset, unfortunately.
Yeah. Cheers for telling me that. I'm sure South Africa will enjoy Test cricket soon. But we'll move on to even more Afghanistan stuff. And our last topic of the day, there was some, obviously in the world of T20s and central contracts and all that stuff, Fazal Haq Faruqi, Naveen ul Haq and Mujibur Rahman, they basically all rejected the Afghanistan Cricket Board's central contracts. The Afghanistan Cricket Board, they weren't having any of it. They just said, nah, you're not getting any NOCs for the next 2 years. You can't play any other franchise cricket. You're screwed. Which basically meant that Mujibur Rahman, he was meant to finish the Big Bash, but he had to fly home early because of his NOC being rejected. But I just want to know, where do you stand on obviously the players being professionals needing to make money, but still playing for your country? And should a cricket board be allowed to deny the opportunities of these players or force the players to choose one way or the other?
I certainly don't think the way Afghanistan. Sorry, I keep getting messed up. I'm tired. But yeah, I certainly don't think that Afghanistan or the way that the board has dealt with it is right. I mean, at the end of the day, playing for your country, I'm sure for these players is the biggest honor they can have. But
Yeah, definitely.
if it's not like if they can't make enough money to have a comfortable life or one that or a life that they perhaps would like in the future, it's certainly, I mean, you look at the likes of Trent Bolt, who's kind of opted out of a central contract recently. He's still playing for the national team and they actually seem to be on quite good terms. And I think there is certainly a balance that can be struck there, and I certainly think that Afghanistan need to sort that out, because if they don't, they could end up losing some of their quality talent to these T20 leagues that are rapidly growing around the world.
Especially some of their T20 players like Rashid, Mujib, Nabi, they're all in high demand, and many more coming through, obviously. But I don't actually think there was too much of an issue because they were playing against the UAE in a kind of not very big state of series. So it's understandable that Mujib was away, and he's going to come back for the India tour anyways. So shouldn't be too much of an issue. But that's all we've got for today. Thank you very much, Lucas. I hope you've all enjoyed it, and we'll see you all next week for some more international roundup. This was Plums and Peaches episode 2. See you later.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.